razzle dazzle, we're the best. No, the courts aren't on your side, but they're not on the tenant side either.
Jen,
Like, you are independently wealthy when you are naked.
I am over treating property management the same as real estate sales.
I guess I'll lead the witness. I think it's freaking scammy. Welcome to Hold It with PM Jen, the show for real estate investors who buy and hold forever and ever. Amen. Welcome back, holders. This is season 3 of your favorite show and mine, Hold It with PM Jen, the show for buy and hold investors. We buy, hold, and never ever sell. So listen, in the journey to achieving the goal of all rental real estate investors, we want to build a portfolio so large that we can live on it, that can be our primary stream of income. And if you want to do that, there's a couple different ways to do it, but eventually you're going to have to reach a point in volume that you need systems and processes. And for that to work well, you'll need some staff to run them. And my argument is that your first hire should be a remote team member, should be administrative support to you, not the person who runs around town delivering signs and doing those things. Those jobs are best done by you, and everything else in the admin world is really probably best done according to a process that you determine. And so you can do this very affordably and with super high quality work by working with remote team members. Now, these are people all over the world who work for you remotely, from their homes usually. And at One Focus, 1/3 of our team of 5 full-time people are based in the Philippines. So we're big believers in this. And this short 3-episode series, the next 3 weeks, is going to cover how you, an investor, can do this. So why should you be doing it? How can you approach this problem? And then how do you, in a really tangible way, hire, onboard, and then hold those people accountable? You'll get to speak to not only today's guest, but our director of operations and one of our remote team members who's been with us now for just about 6 years. But today, my interview is with Jay Buru, co-founder of BetterWho. That is a company that helps you, investors, or even property management companies, find remote team members all over the world for all kinds of positions and roles. I'm using them personally, and he'll tell you a little bit more about his company, how they work, and how you as an investor can think about this. If you like what you hear from him, they're offering a deal to listeners of Hold It with PM Jen. Use code PM Jen when you call, and you will get $500 off of your placement fee for placing that remote team member in your company. And you'll hear me talk over the series about how I think using assistants in the beginning, using agencies, is invaluable. And I'm still using an agency because I find the services to just truly be creating more value than they're costing me. That's for sure. So get ready for today's interview. This first episode is with Jay Buru, the co-founder of BetterWho. He is an expert in this space. He has used them in his businesses. He has grown to be an expert, and now is the company that helps One Focus Property Management hire and find the absolute best talent in the world at the best possible price. It's crazy. Jay, welcome to Hold It with PM Jen.
Hey, thanks so much, Jen, for having me, and a big hello out there to all the investors.
Yeah, we know each other from the property management world, but Jay, we're out there helping real estate investors and small entrepreneurs today because they are not hearing the gospel of, I always call them remote team members. What's the term you like when you refer to this talent?
Yeah, we also go by remote team members, but most people know them as virtual assistants.
Yeah.
Interesting fun fact is that the term remote team member was actually first stated by my business partner, Matthew. And that's where everybody else got it from, is because they're not virtual. They're just don't happen to be there. They're real people, and they're not assistants. They're specialized talent. And that was to refer as to the way that we do our placements, which is different than other people.
And that strikes a bell with me that I think I was following his content. And when I saw that term, I went, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense, especially now with AI and agentic AI. I think the term virtual assistant could come to mean more something along those lines. And you're right, there's nothing virtual about these people. They're very real, and so is their talent. So let's get started with telling me what's your story in using global talent? When did you start? And then how did you get into this business where you're an expert at it?
Yeah, great question. So for a long time, I was very high on payroll, and I didn't have any good systems in place. Um, I was
What
in
kind of
prop.
businesses were you running?
I had property management and real estate businesses in Southwest Florida, and I was operating with 6 local team members, no one virtual. I didn't know this world. Um, Fast forward, we ended up merging our companies, myself and 3 other business partners, to where now we were in 6 states. We had over 1,000 properties that we were managing. And one of my partners, who is my now partner, Matthew Tringali, he was already utilizing virtual assistants at a high level. Um, so when we had over 1,000 properties in 6 states, we had at the time, I think, 30 remote team members and very few local team members.
Wow. So you and so did you get into using remote team members after that merger and you were working together with Matt? That was really your introduction?
Yeah, that was my intro. Matthew was already, he started in the world of virtual assistants by hiring someone to just do some research and finding investment properties. And then he quickly found, okay, this is really something that anybody can do because it doesn't require being local, which was a big mindset shift. Um, as we say, desk jobs are desk jobs and field jobs are field jobs. Anything that you need, like if you need to go drop signs in the ground, obviously a virtual assistant can't do that.
Right.
But anything else, they can. I mean, the United States has not cornered the market on HR.
I got into remote team members in January of 2020, and longest story short, ended up getting 3 at once. And I worked with an agency that not only helped me hire them, but then worked as like an intermediary. So we had a continuing relationship, almost like a temp agency, and we loved it. I remember the very first day after hiring these people, as I drove home, I remember thinking to myself, like, the bar has been raised, team. Like, the bar has been raised. These people are so capable, so smart, picked up really fast, and brought a great energy that even transcended the fact that they were remote to us, right? They were interacting through Zoom, which is like our Slack platform. And so I was driven and motivated by consistency. I was getting really process driven in my business because I wanted to work myself out of the business, and I learned about these processes. And you know who's really crap at doing processes? People who want to work on the ground in a property management company. Like, our boots on the ground people are not the same kind of people who are process driven. So I wanted that consistency, and I wanted more labor thrown at the problem than I could afford. You work with employers today. So you work with all kinds of employers and different kinds of businesses trying to find global talent. What puts them over the edge to call you and go, Jay, it's time. I need somebody doing X, Y, or Z. Like, what are they motivated by?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So, you know, we do things for one of 2 reasons and one of 2 reasons only, either to move us towards pleasure or move us away from pain. And moving away from pain is certainly the most powerful one. Uh, Business owners typically get to a point to where they're at burnout and they just can't do anything else, and they're like, I need someone. I don't have sometimes it's a financial thing, sometimes it's not. Usually it has something to do with finances because global talent is a third of the cost of US based talent. But the problem that exists requires labor, and we're a solid solution for that.
Absolutely. Okay. So before we get too far into this, I know when I tell Amishmen about this, I tell contractors, I tell everybody I meet, because I think it is a really good addition to people's business. If they can figure out how to do this, this really is great leverage. So they immediately are wondering, is this person going to steal my identity or money? They kind of have this mindset that everybody outside of our borders is not to be trusted on the internet, which fair. They don't have time to teach somebody so different than themselves how to do this job that they've convinced only a genius could do. And how can they possibly work for me and understand my business even though they're so far away? So I've given you a couple of things there, but these are the initial reactions. How do you address that as somebody who's found so much success?
Cool. So, before I do that, let me back up 1 second to to how to identify if you need someone. This is what we tell folks: go ahead and do a time study of 1 week, and just in 15-minute increments, write down all of the things that you're doing. And then at the end of the week, take a look at that and say, well, okay, well, what don't I need to be doing? What's not worth my time? What still needs to be done? What doesn't require being done in the field? And essentially, that's going to be your first job description.
Okay. So you're skipping ahead a little bit, but let's go to that and we'll come back to the objections. So I often also hear when I tell a solopreneur, hey, you need to consider this, they go, I'll consider that once I get a boots on the ground guy. I need a boots on the ground guy.
Mhm.
And they're half right and I'm half right. And I'll give you my thesis and you tell me what you think. I think they're half right because they're right. They feel like they need to be doing the admin duties, the things that a remote professional truly could do better than them because they don't even know how to instruct somebody. Every time an admin problem comes, they're solving the problem for the first time. And my argument, the argument against it, of course, is you're shit at admin. You will never stop doing boots on the ground. That is not truly the way to leverage you or your business. What are your thoughts on that first hire? Should it be a remote person? Again, talking to that small entrepreneur or the investor, who's the first one, remote or on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, 100% remote. And that's where creating that job description, by offloading the things that don't need to be done boots on the ground and aren't worth your time. The reason why people are not successful, and this is from placing thousands of remote team members, um, what we found is that the reason why people are not successful with a remote team member is either they've hired wrong or they can't get out of their own way. And, think back to when you first started and you first had your first team member, local or remote. You don't know what to delegate, how not to micromanage. The fact is, we can usually do something better and faster than someone else. But we have to take a step back and we have to allow other people to succeed, but also to fail. Give people permission to, uh, you know, like like you're a kid in a room with white walls and a red can of paint, right? Like give people permission to make a mess at times.
Yeah.
And if you hire right, like the people that you bring on will be able to figure it out and they're going to move the company forward.
Absolutely. And I would add just one thing to that. The processes have to be defined. You cannot possibly do a brain dump to a remote team member unless you have a remote team member who's willing and able to write those standard operating procedures based off of that and establish that for you. And that was one of the reasons, and we'll talk about that in that episode, why we were successful with our first three. We were getting we had made a real transition internally to being dogmatic about processes, documenting and fulfilling them. And because we as a company had made that turn in orientation, and that is the strong suit of these people we brought on, they really helped cement that as part of the culture. And then, of course, we saw the benefit of it. All the team members saw the benefit of it. And then we became like, okay, the processes, the documented processes help make them successful and they make our day just so much easier. So when we look at an investor, you talked about doing a time study. So figuring out what that first role is going to be. I've said we need to have some processes defined. We can't hire them and say, well, they're going to do all the bookkeeping and receptionist duties, and we have no processes laid out to train them with.
Well,
So we got to have that. Yeah.
let me stop you there. When you hire right, you don't have to have processes documented. Your team
Talk more
member,
about that.
yeah, the team members that we place direct hire, those folks will come in and they will document your processes. They will document
Wow.
your SOPs. We every team member that we place is AI certified, and they use a tool called Loom AI that will document SOPs as they're going through. Now, if you know which processes need to be documented, then you would not task them, but um, gosh, I want to go back to task doers and outcome owners later,
Okay.
um, but what you do is let them know, okay, these are the areas that we want to improve our business, and these are the processes that we need, and we need you to start documenting these. So give us a plan of, which ones need to be tackled first and by when. This is empowering someone. It's leading someone. When you can bring in certain leadership skills into being an owner, right, and an
Right.
employer, then you are going to help your team members level up at a level that you never expected before.
You know what's better than building generational wealth? Not a damn thing. And obviously, the best way to do that is through buy and hold real estate. But let's be real, managing your properties yourself? That's a one-way ticket to burnout. This is supposed to be an investment, not a burden. At One Focus Property Management, we don't just manage your properties, we make buy and hold real estate actually work. We handle everything: tenant screening, maintenance, rent collection, you name it. All you do is watch your portfolio and net worth grow. We make sure you never even think about quitting real estate investing, because the secret to buy and hold is to hold it for a very long time. And you can't do that when you sell every time you have a problem. We're the biggest, baddest property management team in Lycoming, Clinton, Northumberland, Montour, and Columbia counties. And we do it all to give you more protection, less work, and absolutely no drama. So let's turn your rental properties into wealth building machines. Learn more at onefocuspm.com. That's onefocuspm.com.
Right. So, okay. So I'm going to take that back. We don't have to have our processes documented. We probably, though, as an owner of a company, as the employer, need to have some clarity on how those problems are solved so we can speak clearly to that so they can be documented. And just checking, once I hire that first remote team person and they document those SOPs for me, those are mine, right? I'm not doing that again with future hires, right? I'm retaining that. If I'm being smart anyway, that's not just living in the My Documents folder of your remote team member. This is something that is your asset.
Well, this is best practice. I mean, here's how I want you to think about virtual assistants, right? Remote team members. They're no different than having a team member in the US. So, whatever questions that you would ask, however you would premise, just go ahead and relate it to how you would treat a human working in the US.
In your
So, yeah,
office down the hall.
yeah, it
Yeah.
could be right on the side of you, right? I mean, if that
Mhm.
person is documenting SOPs, yeah, they're business SOPs. Like this is how business works.
So before we move on, I want to jump back then because what you just talked about how this really is just another employee in your office. And why would we need to talk about these things, right? Because you do this every day for your domestic employees. And I'm going to go back to those mental hurdles the small business person is often going to be say that they're facing, right? This is a person who's very good at a trade and they've turned it into their business. And a lot of investors listening to this, but also tradespeople and whatnot. So those objections, right? How can this person possibly work for me when they live in a place so different? Will they steal my money and my information? I don't have time to teach somebody this. Let's talk about that real lived experience of what does it mean to bring somebody who maybe lives in Nicaragua or Slovakia to work every day in my real estate investment business where I own 30 doors in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Like, what does that look and feel like? And what have you seen people and how's that gone for them?
Yeah. So it starts with hiring right. And when you hire right, you're hiring not necessarily for specific software skills or anything like that, like tactical, but you're looking more at soft skills. Is this person an independent thinker? Can I see this person owning the outcome? Do they want to grow within my organization? And whether your organization is owning 5 properties, but you have a goal of owning 25 more by the end of the year,
Right.
that it doesn't matter where you are. That's an organization if you are looking to grow, and most entrepreneurs are. So
Yeah.
that's the first step, hiring
Okay.
right for the soft skills.
And you're determining that through the same ways we're evaluating staff for all other positions, through interview, background checks, that sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Asking like very pointed questions as to what would you do in this situation, right? So, you're hired into a company that has no processes. How would you handle that? Right? How would you go
Okay.
about that? And if someone says, well, I would wait until, they give me the processes, or I would ask them to do that, like obviously that's not the right fit.
Yeah.
You want someone who's going to give you an answer better than you could even think of.
Right. And it sounds like your better who philosophy there, looking for outcome driven individuals, is really useful for the small business person. I've reached a different stage. My team is bigger. I certainly have remote professional roles that are outcome driven and others that are going to be more task driven, just based on the nature of my machine. But you're right to be thinking, if I only have one or two of these people and I'm running a very small team, there isn't actually a lot of capacity for only task driven individuals. And I think we think about that. We think that we're limited to having task driven individuals in this remote capacity, when that was probably the biggest thing that my eyes lit up about when I actually had my team members, and mine are sourced in the Philippines. But those first three, two of which I still work with now almost 6 years later, I I came to know them as people, and it's not nice to admit, but I had a very one-dimensional view of what people who lived in these other countries, what they were capable of, how they communicated in English, and what they knew and understand about American real estate and business. And I have to tell you, much more than I expected and much more than I deserve for the rate that I'm paying. These are true professionals, and I can't speak enough good about them. So let's talk a little bit, right? Like, if you're a small entrepreneur investor and you're like, that's it, it's ready to think about this. What sort of options exist to me to get this sort of VA talent into my business?
Yeah, 3 different ways. Number 1, you have staffing agencies. In a staffing agency, you pay that company, 14 bucks an hour, and then they pay someone else 4, 5, or $6 an hour, and you're paying them in perpetuity. Well,
Okay.
at, let's say, 5 bucks an hour, you're getting a certain level of talent. If you're able to pay someone direct, which is what we empower business owners to do, and you can pay them direct 10 or $11 an hour, you're still saving money and you're getting a completely different level of talent. And this is why many people associate a virtual assistant with a staffing agency, because that has historically been the model. Um, and you don't have any
Why? Were they
control.
just early actors and early entrants into the space? Like, why is that the default?
Yeah, because things used to be more complicated, right? Just kind of okay, so let's say in real estate, you're looking for a house. Well, 30 years ago, if you were looking for a house, you had to go see a real estate agent who then had a book with all of the listings, and then they had to look through, and but that's not the case anymore. Now anybody can look for property at, in a second by going on any of the websites. Same
Okay.
thing with virtual assistants. It used to be very complicated. How do I pay these people? How do I structure it, right? Like all of those things. How do I train them? It's not complicated anymore. We empower business owners and investors within 3 phone calls to be able to be set up properly to hire and manage a virtual assistant. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why that difference was, that's why, yeah.
Well, in 2020, when I got started, I used a staffing agency. I was very intimidated by the direct hire. I wanted to spend no time thinking about countries or taxes or bank accounts and how is this person going to get the money? How am I going
Yeah.
to supply any kind of benefits? All of that was very foreign to me. And I was willing to take the leap to figure out everything to do with the business and the tasks and the job. And I wasn't willing to think about that. And as I got more secure and familiar in working with these people, I became more motivated. I knew it was more of a long-term solution in my business. And that's why I made the investment then. But I think in the years that went by, it did get significantly easier using, like in my case, I'm using Wise to pay my employees. Are you using something similar to send money abroad?
Yes, very
Okay.
similar.
And so anyway, and I actually had a friend who's in a completely different business here locally talk to me about his global talent, and he sources from all over the world for several businesses. And when I said that I was nervous about it, he looked at me like I was crazy and he's like, "You just use Wise." And I was like, "Oh." So that leads me to my next question, which is, are there considerations for where we source talent? So when I come to you at BetterWho, first of all, do I get to ask you to source from a particular country or region? And second, like, why would I select from a particular country or region?
Yeah, good question. So, is it all right if we have a difference of opinion?
Yes, of course.
um, so I say that because we hire from over 31 different countries, and we have hired from the Philippines before, but we do not hire from the Philippines anymore. What we found what we found is that the culture is very much yes ma'am, no ma'am type of culture. They
Yes.
are good at checking boxes, right? So the
Mhm.
task doers that you're looking for, when they're with the right staffing agency, but they're not good at voicing their opinion. And I'm speaking globally, but this has
Yep.
been the experience that we've had and many other companies like us have
Yes.
had. Yeah.
I'll have to tell you, I agree with you, and I am sourcing from the Philippines. So just to be clear, when it came time for me to make the leap, I had seen every staffing agency that works with NARPM, our trade organization, give presentations. And I picked the one where I just as I say, I like the cut of their jib. It was somebody I'd rather have dinner with versus the others, not to say anything negative about anybody. And they sourced from the Philippines. And I had known some people to use Filipino talent. And of course, I've had a wonderful experience. I've gone to visit the Philippines twice since. But if I was going to rewind the clock and do anything different in terms of my remote team member journey, I would probably source from Central America or Mexico or South America. Now, why? I believe higher caliber talent does not want to work graveyard shift, and my team is working graveyard shift in the Philippines. The other is, and this cultural thing you brought up doesn't make my list, although it probably should. I think you're right. I didn't realize how close I was going to get to these people. I didn't realize these people were going to be with me for 5 to 10 years and really learn how to work with us and do things. I want them to come to NARPM conferences. I want them to like darken the doorway. I want to treat them, and visa travel issues mean I can't bring my Filipino, team members here. We replace that with us going there to visit them, and we treat them like $1 million. But that's the thing that when I tell like a property manager, I just met a property manager at National. He's got 1,100 doors, I want to say in Virginia. And Oodle's a domestic staff. He doesn't even have a remote team member yet. And I go, bro. And he's like, I get it. I get it. It was his first NARPM event. And I was like, you got to really think about it because your competition's doing it. And you are going to be able higher priced and less service if you don't adjust for this. And that's the thing I shared with him. I would just think like this is going to be super successful for me. And I like, what is that going to look like if it's super successful? So, okay. So you don't love the Philippines and I get it, but I'm doubling down because there's a Filipino culture in my business. Like that team has a culture and has a lot of seniority. So at this point, adding different things doesn't feel like the right thing to do. But if I start adding more competencies and things into my team, if I start doing more social media work, more video work, I don't necessarily have to source from that country. So what do you think about when you source? Is there any, or do you just say all 31, search all every time?
Good question. We have lately, I'd say over the past 2 years, Central and South America and Jamaica have been where we've been sourcing most of our talent from. our company, we have 17 remote team members, and we have people in Romania, Pakistan, Central and South America, and a couple of other countries as well. But
Sure.
most have been Nicaragua, Venezuela, El Salvador, a lot of El Salvador lately, Mexico.
And should I care if I'm an investor with 30 doors ready to make their first hire? Should I care whether my remote professional's in Nicaragua, Brazil,
No,
Pakistan? I shouldn't care.
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, you shouldn't care where they are in the world, even if they're in the Philippines, if they have the soft skills that you're looking for. I just happen to mention that because culturally it's not a good fit for what we do. But if they check the boxes for what an investor needs, then giddy up.
yeah. One other thing is to consider if you're going to build a big team is having them dispersed. It diversifies the risk, right? Because when a typhoon or an earthquake, and there's been some earthquakes in the Philippines recently,
Yeah.
it could take out the whole team depending on how centered your team is on that natural disaster. So if you're sourcing out of Jamaica, maybe you just love the experience you've had with your Jamaican talent and you continue sourcing. And for right now, I don't know if there's a storm. I'm actually not keeping big up to date on it, but there's a storm going through Jamaica. If I've got 5 team members in the middle of a hurricane, although my business is based in North Central PA, that is a stressful time for me and leaves me vulnerable. So there's an argument to being diversified. Beyond wages, when I think about attracting this talent, so beyond however much per hour we're talking, what sort of compensation benefits should I be offering? Are they expecting? I know what American employees want. What do remote professionals want?
Yeah, pretty much the same.
Okay.
Um, we would give 2 weeks PTO to any of our team members, US or remote. Um, but honestly, we don't even go by that philosophy anymore. What we found is that for the first 90 days, we have them paid hourly, and we use time tracking software. We use Time Doctor,
Okay.
and that will track if they're paying attention and doing the things, right? You don't have to pay attention to it too closely, but it's something that keeps them honest. And that for those first 90 days are, it's the dating phase. You're building a relationship, building trust. And then after those 90 days, and you have your 90-day evaluation with them of what the next steps look like, then we put them on salary. And with salary, if somebody wants to take a vacation for 3 weeks, I mean, we talk about it, right? Like it's
Okay.
it's it's fine. What we find is that most people, um, when they need time off, they'll bring their computer with them and they'll be working anyway.
Yeah.
That's just what we found to create a strong culture, a culture of trust, and a culture
Mhm.
of owning the outcome.
Right.
Now, at the same time, for most people, if you're hiring your first virtual assistant, for the investors listening to this, um, I would say treat them just like you're treating anyone in the US. Give them 2 weeks paid time off, something like that.
Okay. All right, good. And keep in mind your holidays might be different. So, depending on who you're sourcing and how this is working, I mean, we kind of have a Filipino holiday schedule and a US holiday schedule at One Focus. By the way, huge benefit. My office is up and working many American holidays. Let me come back then to taxes. Is there any consideration when we hire globally in terms of taxes?
Yes. So here's the thing. The IRS and I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax accountant, full disclaimer, but from placing thousands of remote team members, what we found is that the IRS cares about 2 things. Are they US citizens, which they're not, and do they live in the US? No, they don't. So there's no issue there. You can pay them as contract labor. Um, from everything that we've done and everyone that we know, there has not been any issues to date. Now, on the other side, if you want that extra layer of protection, you can get what's called an employee of record service, EOR service, which is really just a business that's in their country that you pay them, and then they take a portion of that, and then they pay the remote team member the rest.
So you're
So
truly
that'll
paying an entity who's running a payroll in that country and has the payroll tax liability.
correct.
Right. Which is what we did when we were using a staffing agency. It was an employer of record. But after doing the research, I felt less intimidated by the understanding the treaties and doing a direct situation. All right. So
Yeah.
you help a lot of professionals be successful with remote team members. In that first 30 days, first remote professional, what's the number one mistake you see people making where it's not going to work for them if they don't fix this?
For the business owner, you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, Trying to find tasks for them to do, trying to find a task list, because it's not about a task. It's about having a job description and leading that person instead of giving them stuff. Because if you start giving them stuff, then now there's this expectation. You know, I'm waiting for this person to give me something. I'm waiting for him to give me something.
Let's
And then
paint
you're
a
saying,
picture. Let's be a little bit
yeah,
more clear. So let's say and I'm thinking of a gal earlier in season 2. She is a mother. So she has 2 young children. Her husband works full time. She's got 30 doors. It's her job to manage them. And she goes, it is time, but I am not even sure what to do. When we talk about her designing an outcome-based job, what's an example of what that might look like?
excellent. So can I use her?
Totally. Her name's
Perfect.
Rebecca.
All right. So Rebecca would do what I had mentioned before with the time study and
Okay.
look at all the things that she shouldn't be doing and also the things that can be done from a desk job anywhere in the world. Usually, for someone like Rebecca, this would be maintenance coordination and leasing.
Okay.
Those are the two most common first responsibilities that you would give to someone else. So that job description might be maintenance coordinator and leasing specialist. I would take it even a step further at 30 doors because at doing maintenance and leasing is not going to be enough, in my opinion, for someone who's high level talent. So I would probably hire an integrator slash operations manager at that point. They can still do the maintenance and the leasing, but
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be the core person that is going to set you up for success long term. They're going to
Right.
be the person that can manage other people, right? They're that first key hire. So they're so important to people like Rebecca.
Sure. So this operations manager, we think of them as handling the operations. So Rebecca's freer to do more deals. Rebecca is still putting the sign in the front of the lawn herself, unless she has another person hired domestically. But her time is free to do that, and she probably doesn't resent that task quite as much when she isn't backlogged with phone calls and meetings and whatnot. So how much time, once Rebecca's first remote team member is onboarded and she's trained them and all the SOPs, how much time would an investor, employer to a remote team member be giving that person? I know in my business, my EA and I are about 15 minutes face to face once a day. And we've got it down where that's all we need. How much time do you think they should be spending or shouldn't be spending?
Yeah, I would say the 15 minutes once a day is completely fine. But in
Okay.
addition to that, you should have a 30-minute weekly one-on-one. So
Okay.
every week in the calendar, the first thing that you do when you onboard someone is you set in the calendar the 30-minute weekly one-on-ones and the 30, 60, 90-day evaluations. After that, it's just evaluations every 90 days. But on the weekly one-on-ones, this is your opportunity not to correct, but to lead.
Mhm.
You know the outcome of what you're looking for. Maybe Rebecca's looking to get from 30 doors to 40 doors. Maybe
Yeah,
she's also looking to improve her systems. These are conversations that you have with this person and say, hey, what's going well, what's not going well? How do you think that we can improve this? Also, just engaging with them a little bit about what they see that might be able to improve the current systems. But
sure.
it's asking questions and having that designated time.
That's awesome. Um, Warning signs. So, in the beginning of working with a new remote team member, what sort of warning signs would we see, behaviors maybe in that remote team member to let us know we don't have a match? You know, we might have a performance problem. What are the things we're keeping an eye out for?
Communication, lack of communication, which Slack, having a Slack or a Zoom, like you said, ongoing messaging is important. Not all the time, right? But if I send somebody on my team a message in Slack, I expect them to answer relatively quickly. Um,
Yeah.
if balls are being dropped, that's a huge red flag. You have to set expectations right out of the gate when you hire someone. This is how I expect to communicate and how often I expect to communicate, which, if we back up now to the hiring, make sure that you're clear with the expectations from the person that you're hiring, right? It has to be a good culture fit. And sometimes when we're talking about culture, we're talking about Rebecca, who may not have a culture, so to speak, but she really does, because Rebecca is a human being who lives and operates a certain way. And we want
Yeah.
to get somebody that's going to be able to match that, but also complement the areas where Rebecca is weak.
Oh my gosh, you just said exactly what Lindsay, my EA, does for me. She compliments me where I'm weak, but for a Filipina girl, I say
Mhm.
she plays an American EA very well. She takes a lot of bravery from me, I think, and I'm a particularly bold boss. Um, yeah,
No, come on.
I know, right? I think I just shudder to think what Lindsay must tell, like, her friends and family about her crazy American boss, but they've met me now a couple times. Uh, I would reiterate what you said in terms of those warning problems. I like to notice the difference, right? So what I always advise supervisors of RTMs on my team is lay eyes every day. Every single day. You might go, "We have nothing to cover today," whatever. Lay eyes, have a face to face on camera, because when that person starts having like black circles under their eyes, you might notice it when their reaction times get maybe different. You know, maybe they're hyper reactive all the time, and now all of a sudden they're not reactive. You're having to remind them of messages and things like that. When we notice those changes, those are warning signs the same way as if the person in the office next to you had changed their behavior significantly. You would want to notice and address it. And it can feel weird or awkward to say, wow, things haven't been going quite as smoothly, but you have to do it. You have to be extra communicative with those remote team members. So, your best advice for the investor who's heard all this, says we're right, but is still scared. What are you going to tell them?
Hmm, let me see. Still scared? Well, I would tell them either, well, if you hate money, then don't invest in property. But if you hate money, then don't hire a remote team member. But if you value your time and you value keeping money in your pocket, then you need to be open to the idea. And you need to have that first conversation with someone who's knowledgeable and can guide you through and take the risk, which I say risk, which it's going to be a risk to you because you haven't experienced it before. But at the end of the day, it's not a risk. If you're an investor, guess what? This is your investment. This is the biggest investment you can make, is in people, because people are going to be able to create more time for you. And that's what's going to create more investment purchases for you.
Absolutely. And the investment and the money is one thing, and the wages for this person or the hiring expense or whatever that is. But the investment you make in figuring out how to do this, just learning this new skill, pays off tremendously for your business. And I say that as a person who's now 6 years into my journey. I now have 5 full-time team members. I would never let them go. This will always be a part of how I run businesses for the rest of my life, and the and time and effort I put into learning this is going to serve my businesses tremendously. So, let's tell those scaredy cats, get off the ledge, learn a new skill, it'll be fine. In order to help get them there, you mentioned a conversation. So, who should they have that conversation with?
Yeah, they should have a conversation with a BetterWho. So you can
Okay.
email me or head over to our website and book a call. But no pressure. I mean, 30
Right.
minutes, you can ask any question that you have, any hesitations. And quite honestly, Rebecca or David, right? Like those two different people are going to have two different needs. So by me and my team being able to ask you the specific questions, we're the professionals. We can help
Yeah.
put you in the right direction. Don't hire the wrong person. Don't hire the wrong
Right.
position, but speak to someone like myself or anyone else out there that has those skills to help make sure that you hire the right person at the right time.
Yeah, that's the risk is really so much more in how you prepare for the person and then how you hire the person than it is in bringing global talent into your business. And so I tell new people, and this is what I would say. First of all, new investor, if you're scared, thank you for listening to this episode the whole way through. Listen to the next two because you're going to hear other perspectives on this. You're going to get just a lot of juicy content on what this is really like for us. But I would say you do need to have that conversation with Jay or one of his people at BetterWho because if you just go on, and I don't even know the websites, but there are ways I can say, hey, I'm an American company who wants to hire somebody in another country. I can post an ad and do this directly, but I'll tell you, working with an expert sets you up for success so much more. And we'll let everybody know where to reach you, but we have something really exciting here, an affiliate offer. My very first one, you guys, on the podcast. I'm such a podcast baby, but if when you go to BetterWho, you use code PMGen, that is with one N, don't be crazy and use two. So PMJEN, they're going to give you $500 off that direct hire service. That is a big, juicy discount. And I think I'm using them personally in my business. They're where I've done my last couple hires through. They've been successful for me. And this is my plan for the future. When we talk about how we're going to hire and source global talent, we're doing it with this very valued industry partner. And I was so glad when I talked to Jay and I said, do you serve more than just property management companies? Because I'm trying to get that solution for investors. He's like, we know this for investors. We know this for contractors. So Jay, you mentioned email, website. Be really clear. Where do they go next?
Yes, JAY at betterwho.com or just betterwho.com, and you will see a link right there smack in front of you. You can schedule a call with us.
No obligation. Explore the topic. See what happens, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
They're my favorite kind of discovery calls. And you take the pressure off and you just have a little fun with it and educate someone.
You know, when people ask me what I do, I'm tempted to just say, look, I'm a problem solver. You tell me where you want to go, and then I'll identify the problems that are in the way, and we'll help you avoid them.
Gosh, how much value is there in that? Holders, you've gotten another juicy episode from me, as always, for free. I can't figure out I should call it Charge It with PM Gen because I haven't figured that out, but I've certainly figured out real estate investment. Guys, we're going to buy and hold forever and ever. Amen. See you next time. Episode was fantastic. Thanks again to Jay for spending all that time with us and for giving us the promotional code PMGen, PMJEN. Use that when you contact BetterWho at betterhwo.com to place your remote team member today. Get $500 off that initial placement fee. And if you're wondering how in the world are you going to move and convert money all over the world safely, quickly, and easily, well, you should be using Wise. Wise.com, WISE. Find my link in the information for this podcast or post where you get a cost-free transfer enabling you to fund your account without any extra admin fees. But don't worry about fees with Wise. I find it is extremely affordable. Thanks so much for listening. And next week, we'll be talking with Jesse Loophole about how exactly we onboard, train, and hold our remote team members accountable.